I'm in a great mood. Don't ruin it.
That's Mina Kimes you just heard. And I don't know why it is that she would think that we'd be the ruiner of great moods, because we are the creator of great moods. We have a whole lot of people here to enjoy this segment with you, Mina, as we get a lot football smarter and bob around pop culture and the world in general. But let me just start, because God Bless Football was obsessed with the Denver Broncos. What is real and true about what has happened with the Denver Broncos, and what is real and not true? Because I've got a lot of people telling me Russell Wilson is playing very well, and I also see a lot of turnovers and a lot of sacks there, and I don't know whether he's playing very well or not. So tell me, what's right and what's wrong?
I am so glad you asked me that. I don't know if Mike Ryan planted that question for you, because I'm doing a YouTube video on that exact topic at youtube.com/@Mina Kimes, but I will get into it here with you because it is something that I've been fascinated by. Like the fact that the Broncos started 1-5 and then ripped off 5 straight wins. That's only happened 5 times in NFL history. Week 6, they had like an infinitesimal chance of making the playoffs, and now they are firmly in the hunt, which is such a great place to be as an NFL team when you get on the in the hunt chart on TV shows. But it does, I think, raise some questions about whether they're like actually in the hunt, whether they can keep this up, despite the fact they've played some and beaten some pretty good teams. So it's kind of a yes and no thing. So first of all, the things that are good and real, the offense was always fine. Even in those first few games when everybody was crapping all over them, obviously they got their butts kicked by Miami. They lost to Nathaniel Hackett in that revenge game. Throughout all of this, aside from maybe like 1 or 2 games, Russell Wilson was playing okay. He wasn't, I wouldn't say he looks like he did during, the peak of his NFL career, but he's run a pretty efficient offense. He's basically Alex Smith now in Denver. Like Sean Payton got him to just check it down and lean on the run game. He has the lowest average depth of target of his entire career. So let Russ cook is over. It's let Russ make snacks, and it's working for Denver. It's working. But the defense is sort of the big thing. And that's where I think the fraudulence claims have a little bit of veracity to them, because as you alluded to, they've been very dependent on turnovers. That is a thing that tends to regress. So it's unlikely they're going to be as good as they've been. However, they have also made some changes in personnel. They benched a couple guys in the secondary. Baron Browning came back. So when you dig into the underlying numbers, you do see some improvements in pass defense, particularly limiting explosives. They're just kind of an average defense now instead of a historically bad one.
When talking about Russell Wilson and the offensive production, I'm glad you mentioned the defense, because it's has a huge hand in how the offense puts up points. In fact, they still struggle. The thing is, they're creating so many turnovers that they're starting all these drives in opposing territory. In fact, during this 5-game winning streak, and this comes courtesy of Cleveland Analytics, which is a great website, does great stuff, at CLEVTA on X.
Cleveland, interesting.
During this 5-game win streak, 30% of their drives have started following an opposing turnover. That's 11% higher than the second-place 49ers, and the gap between Denver and San Francisco is the same as San Francisco and number 28 overall LA Rams. And they only have scored 2 touchdowns after starting their drives on the average field position of 46 on the opposing territory. So they're just kind of getting lucky, and I doubt that this is super sustainable for them, Mina.
What you just said there about how the offense has been put in a good position because of all these turnovers. Turnovers tend to regress. Dan, you asked me last week about like stats that people tend to overlook when we talk about teams and trends. That is a huge one, not just turnovers, which is, I said this about the Bills when they were losing. Like often a lot of football is just explained by turnovers, frankly, but also field position, where the offense is to start drives. These are things you should look up when you're trying to figure out how good teams really are, how good different units really are, because as Mike said, it really does tell a story, and you're 1,000% right about the Broncos. I will add one more thing, however, that I think somewhat explains their success in the red zone. Russell Wilson looks mobile again. So I know I just called him a check down Charlie,
a snack
maker.
A snack maker and an Alex Smith is what you just called him.
I like snacks more than meals, so I don't want you to take that as a negative.
I like them more than you do.
You ever feel like at weddings the snacks are too good, and then by the time they get to the meals, it's a letdown because the past hors d'oeuvres are so much better?
Yes.
Build the
than
whole plane
entrees?
out of the snacks.
Cocktail hour
Here's
forever.
the problem. Here's the problem. You can't do that because in cooking the meal, it's just too much for too many people. It'll never taste good. But the food that you could do that would taste good, people say, well, this isn't a wedding meal. They want a steak. They want grilled salmon or whatever. But you can't do that in bulk and have it out in time. So that's the problem with wedding meals. I actually support your theory. It should be all hors d'oeuvres. There.
It's very important
Well-
that you support their theory.
I also support it. The entire wedding, just hors d'oeuvres.
And martinis.
Hors d'oeuvres are easier to make in bulk. Like
Yes.
cheap hors d'oeuvres, like a just pigs in a blanket, are awesome regardless of how much they cost. Whereas like a main dish made in bulk is a lot harder to pull off. So that's the Russell Wilson offense in Denver. But he's also been very mobile. And when you watch him, he is actually one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL when he's on the move this year. A lot of those spectacular plays, there haven't been that many, but when they do happen, it tends to happen when he is on the move. He's been very good in the red zone at keeping plays alive. And I think it's like that formula: the snacks up and down the field, running the football, and then the occasional, Russell Wilson's still pretty fast. I think he lost like 10 or 15 pounds or something, and he looks like it.
Mina, going back to snacks for just one moment, have you had a full, they make pigs in a blanket by doing like full-size hot dogs wrapped in pastry and then cut into little pieces?
Wait, you just take a corn dog and then make a
No, like a normal hot dog, and then you put, a crescent roll around it, and then you bake it, and then you cut it into pieces.
Wow.
So you start with a giant one,
Yeah.
and then you make it bite
Yeah.
size.
What is the benefit of that as opposed to just using the little wieners?
As I'm saying it out loud, I don't know,
Nah,
but
love you,
they're
Charlotte.
delicious.
I love you, Charlotte.
Thanks, Juju.
It's a girthier pig in a blanket.
Whoa.
Take it back to the Broncos. Isn't making all hors d'oeuvres when you have actual skilled positions? You have 4-course meals on the outside. Can't you
You
hold
mean
that
Cortland
against them?
Sutton and
Yeah, they have good talent. Judy Mims, although I can understand maybe being a little bit more lukewarm on Judy, considering how all the hoopla he came into the league with, and he hasn't necessarily delivered. But they have great skill positions, allegedly.
they're good. I wouldn't say they're great. Judy's pretty inconsistent. It has been fun to see Cortland Sutton return to form. I don't know. I mean, he was awesome early in his career. I don't know if you remember, like 2019 or so, before he had all those injuries. And then I knew that this was sustainable when he posted the Russell Wilson apology form. I don't know if you guys see that or if you're familiar with this concept where fan bases circulate these quarterback apology forms. And they're like the Josh Allen one, which I definitely should have signed. And I don't know if anyone's ever said that to me. I'll sign it now. It's like, I was wrong. He's amazing. Here's the dumb reason I believed. I listened to the wrong person, or I pay attention to Twitter. And so Sutton posted one for Russell Wilson. And the second he did that, I was like, oh, this is good. This is a real relation. He has defined the relationship. He loves his quarterback, which you remember birthday party last year, a lot of questions. How many friends does Russell Wilson really have? It's a pretty good sign when your best friend in the locker room is your number one wide receiver.
Put it on the poll, or maybe they're best friends because he's the number one wide receiver. Put it on the poll at Le Batard Show. Has there ever been a good wedding main meal, or have you ever had a good wedding main meal? When you say good outside of the pocket, Mina, who are the best quarterbacks outside of the pocket?
Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Dak Prescott's been very good when he's been outside the pocket. Dak Prescott's been good at like just about everything this year. But so it's an interesting mix, right? It's the guys who create and are just impossible to bring down. And then it's guys who are good at throwing on the run. I think Dak is good at throwing on the run. He's a really good example of that.
Dan's wedding had a really good food.
Oh, it did actually.
Yeah, because he had the stations.
Oh, I love stations.
Right, carving
Oh,
stations.
If you're gonna
and
do
stuff.
it, do stations.
He had an entire dessert room.
Yep.
Do you guys remember that?
Yes, I
I
do.
think about that
Shocker.
like once a month.
I have one of those in my house.
Thanks for the invite, Dan.
Mina, your
didn't even
hair,
know
your
you
hair
then.
is so perfect. It has bounce, volume, and body. But sticking to the
Oh, I know,
AFC, will the Buffalo Bills make the playoffs this year?
I don't know. I think their chances right now are like under 50% or something.
15% is where it was because of the upcoming schedule.
I looked at the schedule, and I think if they win 4 of the next 5 games or something, they're still firmly in the mix. I do think I'm not ruling them out. It's crazy when you look at teams like the aforementioned Broncos, who are 6-5 suddenly, right? The Bills are so clearly a better football team, and they have had bad turnover luck and things have not gone their way, and they've had like just things go wrong in the worst situations. I do feel like there's a it's not impossible that they win those 4 games. But it is, they have to win them all. They're a better team. It's really frustrating right now.
This feels like an entry point to talk about my Steelers, Mina, because you were someone who was pretty high on Kenny Pickett in the preseason, and then things have, yes, a little bit. Yes. Yeah.
A lot of caveats. I had a lot of caveats.
Fair. So did I. One of them was Matt Canada. He has now been fired, and their offense for the first time in 58 games had over 400 yards. Do you feel any differently about the Steelers now at 7-4 than you did 4 weeks ago when they were struggling and yet still kind of winning games that they were being outgained in?
I think that I thought that the offense did look better. It wasn't all, there's always, whenever like a coordinator or coach gets fired, I would never bet against the team or the unit because there's like that dead cat bounce. And I had a feeling they were going to have a big day. But some of the things they did were impressive. I think the run game has really improved. The offensive line has been good at blocking the run. It felt like the run and the pass were finally tied together. Dominique and I talked about this 1 minute on my podcast. And
did you just say Did you just say 1 minute out loud because Jessica just held up 1 minute for only you to see?
I thought she was talking to someone off screen. Like 1 minute, I'm not.
Mina,
done
why
yet.
are you not better at this? Why can you not multitask? Why can you? You've been doing television.
I want to hear what she had to say about the Steelers, Dan. Shh. There's
What?
now
we're
only
down to
35
like 40 seconds.
I know, but I don't understand why that's still happening to you. You're a professional.
I have to say it verbally because otherwise, 30 seconds now. I have 30 seconds to explain how the Steelers offense looked, thanks to you.
Yeah, but you have another segment. What do you mean, thanks to me?
You are cutting into my time.
But you said 1 minute out loud when you were the only one being shown a sign that said 1 minute. You're a professional television person.
Yeah, and now I have 10 seconds to say that Kenny Pickett was finally throwing to the middle of the field. He was the target of the middle of the field, the least of any quarterback in the NFL prior to last week. He was 9 for 11 for 132 yards this week, throwing to the middle of the field. Pat Firemuth being back played a huge role in that. Really helps tying together the run and the pass.